Thank you, Julia. Hi, everyone. How are we doing tonight? I'm so excited to see you. I'm so excited to be here, here in LA. It's such an important time for women, for creators, and also to be here with my 19th fam. We don't get to see each other that often, so it's cool to see everybody here in the room and to see all of you. I'm Chabelica Razana. I'm the economy reporter with the 19th. And I'm also a Cubanita from Miami, so it's cool to be here with all of these Latinas on stage as well. So tonight we're gonna have a free-flowing conversation. I wanna make it a conversation, and so feel free to jump in, interrupt me. That's like a staple of our culture, honestly, interrupting. So feel free to just lean into that tonight. And so I'm gonna do a couple of quick intros. You know who these amazing folks are, but I'm gonna do a quick intro. We've got Gloria Calderon Kellett. She's a showrunner.
There they are. The heads are here. That's right. Wait, is this okay? Oh, you gotta get real close. Okay.
You gotta put it up here, yeah. Showrunner, writer, producer, director, actor. I don't know if I missed any, Gloria. You got a couple of those. And she is a Cubanita from Portland, which we will get to in a little bit. We have Dani Fernandez. She's a Chicana writer, actor, and host. And Linda Yvette Chavez. She's a showrunner, director, producer, writer, and also a Chicana. So in solidarity with the writers and actors, just a note, we won't be talking about specific projects or where to find them, but
Google.
You can Google them. You know where they are. In preparing for this, I was watching some of the work that y'all have done and just felt like this sense of giddiness, being able to see characters cramming grapes down their mouths on New Year's Eve or flipping seamlessly between English and Spanish. It's something that's so rare. We know it's rare, but it's so powerful when you get to see it on screen. And so I'm curious about kind of the flip side of that, right? Like, as you were starting your careers, was there ever a time, an inflection point, when you saw a Latinx story told so badly that you said, I can do this better, I can portray this better, I should, be able to do this story, tell this story? So I think we should start with a roast. What is a really bad Latinx story?
Well, I will say the first time I heard my last name on TV, Calderon, and it was the drug dealer on Miami Vice.
Of course.
Was Calderon. He was the big bad. And I was like, oh my God, it's So it was just a bummer, an immediate bummer.
Oh my gosh, I feel, is mine on? Oh, okay, yes. Girl, I blacked those out. I don't even know if I can think of, I also am nervous to call people out that are still working.
This is a roast.
Yeah, I don't know, Linda?
Pitch it my way. I mean, every single maid stereotype growing up, that was one that was intense for me because it was not working. She was right.
It's my shoe, isn't it?
That was a tough one because a lot of my aunts were maids when I was younger, and so seeing those women be like, "Sí, señor, no, señor," I was like, "Oh, hell no." My tias would be like, "Hell," they would come home talking shit and like being real, and just like those were not the women that I grew up with, and so for me, it was such a motivating force for the types of stories and people I wanted to see. I wanted to see my mom and my tias and my primos and my abuelos like being real, being three-dimensional the way that I saw them growing up.
Yeah, thank you for that. Gloria, as I mentioned, Cubana from Miami, meeting a Cubana from Portland. It's like a species I didn't know existed. It's fascinating to get to be able to chat with you.
We're everywhere.
We are, and that, I think, is a really important point, because the reality of the Latinx identity is that it's layered, right? There are all these different levels to it, even for people from the same background, like me and Gloria. I mean, Chicanos, Boricuas, Argentinos, we come from over 20 countries, all different cultures, and yet our story is so often distilled into this one idea of what being Latinx is and means, right? And so, Gloria, I would love to hear from you about how you made the case that nuance deserved attention, deserved to be seen, and that there was a hunger for it, right? Because there was a market for it.
Yeah.
How'd you do that?
Well, for me, it was because whenever growing up, when they'd say, "What part of Miami are you from?" I'd say Portland, and they're like, "Well, there are Latinos in Portland." It struck me. It speaks to the lack of quality education that we get about Latinidad in schools, and how we are really erased from the American history books, because a lot of people, how many people know Project Peter Pan, Operation Pedro Pan?
Me.
Yeah. There was an influx of 14,000 plus Cuban children, unaccompanied minors, 14,000, that came to Miami in Florida City and were there. And before that, Miami was orange groves. It is Miami now because of those children and then their families that subsequently were able to come over that built this community that is now Miami. So what happened is there was no infrastructure. There were not enough apartment buildings. There were not enough schools. There were not enough. So different churches all around the country took in 20 families here, 30 families there. So my parents ended up being taken in by about 30 Cuban families to Portland, Oregon. So I grew up in this beautiful little Cuban community where like we knew the grocery guy, Pedro, he had the place that sold all of the Cuban stuff, and the car dealership, you go to Paco, and like we had all of our people, and we had this really beautiful community that I was able to grow up in. And then the code switching was so early. I mean, I just thought everybody code switched. Everyone was one way at home and one way with the rest of the people. And it was beautiful. And so I think when I came to LA and I was trying to make up for the lack, for the deep erasure, for the starvation of representation that we often experience, I was like, this show's gonna take place in Portland, Oregon. And they're like, really? I'm like, well, yeah, first of all, I wanna do the structure of that show, Google it, is different days throughout the year. So I wanted weather. And that's really how I sold it. And also I wanted to say Latinos are everywhere. And so for all the Latinos that didn't grow up in LA or Miami or New York, they are seen here as well.
And what was the reception to that? Like, how did you fight for that?
Oh my gosh, the amount of people that were like, apparently there's a huge Cuban contingency now in Kansas. So like Kentucky, like, so all these people were reaching out like, oh my gosh, I'm a Mexican in Portland. And I was like, yeah, that's my family. It was really cool to see that everybody wants to see themselves. Yeah. It's so simple. Yeah. But we all want to just get validation that we exist. And media is a mirror, whether we like it or not. And that erasure, I think, speaks volumes.
Yeah. Danny, I would love to hear you jump in here because you've written about not being considered Latina enough, right, by white folks in the industry. And again, that's another one where our identities are so complex and that we're so often told, this is what you are, instead of getting to tell other people, this is who we are.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty common. I remember I saw an Insecure where I think it was the first episode, Issa Rae was talking and a girl raises her hand and is like, why do you sound white? And I was like, why do we associate this sound with being white? I was really fascinated and horrified by that, but it seems to be a really common experience. And I also am not in LA or New York or Miami because I'm from Texas. So I rep it real hard. And, I think a lot of times people associate Texas, which is literally on the border, but a lot of people associate it with white guys in F-150s listening to Kenny Chesney. When if you go there, it's super diverse. And I was just really frustrated with it. Kind of is like, well, we are here, and our brown culture and community is so vibrant and so rich here. Why are we being erased? Why do we not get to claim this space? So everything that I write is actually set in Texas. Hope that it can all stay there. Not like Texas, but accidentally shot in LA. But yeah, so representation does matter. And yeah, I think I was just tired of hearing that. I think they have a very stereotypical kind of going back to what Gloria is saying is that we're everywhere and there's no singular way to be Latino. There's no singular way to look or sound. And I was just really upset that they had. I also want to say, whenever you get that note, actors, if you get that note, to be more Mexican or something, just ask them, yeah, can you show me? Can you show me what you mean? I would love, hang on, let me record it real quick. Because I'm about to say whatever you're about to do is really effing racist. And so I just was kind of over that thought process, especially of having white people tell me something about my own culture and my own identity, because it's what they've been fed on television, right? Our, like you were saying, maids, if that's all they think of us, And I want to say, like, it's a really interesting line to have to draw because that's a beautiful and hardworking profession. I just don't like the fact that white people always associate us with being servants to them. It's like that's not the only thing. And so I think that having storytellers that can walk that nuance so well is why we should be here.
Yeah. And those care jobs are important, critical jobs in our
course.
community, and they're not treated that way, and they're certainly not represented that way. I mean, my mom was a hotel housekeeper, first job when we got here from Cuba, and so I hear you on that. As a queer Latina, I know you're wearing your bisexual colors today.
Look, I had this shirt for a bit, and I was like, let me break it. It was Bisexual Awareness Week. Let me break this out.
It's Bisexual Awareness Week, and I wonder if you feel like there is openness in Hollywood to tell those stories, particularly of queer Latinas. Our culture has not always been welcoming to LGBTQ plus people, and how do you feel Hollywood is
I
responding?
think too, bisexual stories are very, I even think of some of the rooms that I was in, and they're just such a misunderstood. I remember one of my showrunners, it was a man and a woman, but he was bisexual. Male bisexuality is almost non-existent, but I remember she was like, oh, well, he'll never really love her. And I was like, that's not exactly. I was like, that's not what that means. And so I was just like, wow, we really have so far to go, which is another reason why we need to be in there. But I'm really for queer joy.
Yeah.
I want us to be able to tell all of the stories that white people get to tell. So if you're like me and like I came up, writing about trauma, making money selling my trauma. I think Adele has that line that's like, I turn my sorrows into treasured gold. I feel we all have done that. But I also just want to dick around with my friends. Like I want to be able to make a show about my friends being dumbasses and me being dumb as hell with them and doing the stuff that white kids get to do. And so, yeah, I think having queer joy as well and bad queer people. I know Bottoms was, they've been talking about that a lot, but having, we don't all need to be redeemed. Some of us can just be S-heads. I don't know if we're allowed to cuss. But yeah, the full spectrum of queerness, the full spectrum of storytelling.
Thanks, Danny. Linda, you've also been at the center of telling these honest, complex stories about our community. I'm struck by your focus on working class people, in particular, bless you, Gloria, on working class people, and showing how hard they're working, showing how often their successes are erased. That's a big through line of our community. Yeah. How did you sort of tap into your upbringing? How did that help shape the way that you approach storytelling? And what is being done to encourage that kind of honest storytelling in Hollywood now?
Yeah, I grew up working class. My dad's a Teamster, retired Teamster. I grew up, in a family of hard workers. I grew up low income, and I've been always very vocal about that from the beginning because, one, I want people to understand that we can be making these shows. Folks like myself who come from those backgrounds can show up and tell you great stories. And also just to be like a face for those who did grow up working class to be able to say, hey, she's doing it, I can do it too, because we need you, right? And I think the other part of it for me is what I was saying earlier about growing up seeing representations of my family that were so one-dimensional. And then to add to what Danny was saying earlier, the onus of like, we don't want to see ourselves as gardeners or maids or, janitors, all these things. And I'm like, yeah, but some of my family are that. And just because they weren't represented the right way because the wrong people were telling their stories doesn't mean they get to be erased by you. And I didn't want them to be erased. I love them. They're my family. They're my friends. And so, something like, I can't say the name. Google it. Something like the series that I did with Marvin, we both really went into it with that heart and with that experience as, children of immigrants in this country, working hard, trying to make it. But also what I loved about that series was that we got to have a gamut of characters. So then you got to see teachers, you got to see business people, you got to see restaurant owners, taco shop owners, you got to see mariachi working on the corner. That was on purpose, and I think that was a big blessing for us. But even within that, because you could say like, oh, Hollywood always does the East LA, like a Mexican story, right? All right, East LA. you know, that's always a complaint as well. But even within that small microcosm of a world, there were still so many barriers we had to break. Like, can this woman look like a professor? And having to convince people, yes, she can. Like, can this person look like she went to Stanford? Yeah, look at me, I went there. Like, why do I have to convince you of that?
Yeah.
Can this like Cholito look like he read a book?
Yeah.
Like, those things are still, that's how nuanced and deep it is. Like Jen is saying, it's like not, there is so much further to go. Even right, every time you think you got him far, and there's still, it's like, wait a second, I thought we were past that. Didn't that end in the 90s? But it does, and sometimes it doesn't. And like the things that we come across in the rooms that we go into, sometimes it's just, you can't even, I mean, we're all gonna write books someday about the things that we've really experienced and heard and been told, right? But we have to put on the brave faces, and we do it for our communities and for the love of the art, ultimately. But like Danny, I wanna do some crazy shit too. I wanna, you know, like I've done a lot of like, for my community, and I want them to see themselves also having fun and having joy, and that's the season of life I'm in. Is like, okay, at what point do I stop letting capitalism destroy me as I chase it, right? And start to be in my joy, start to have peace, which is something that Glo was talking about earlier when you were doing the little pre-interview. You should tell them about that. Peace and joy. Oh God, how much I crave that.
But can I just want to say, as big fans and friends of both of y'all, I think a part of it is also that when each of your respective shows come out, they're expected to represent the entire community.
Yeah.
And in a way, like I'm watching Succession, and I don't know, yeah, exactly. Even Ted Lasso, I'm like, I don't think most white people can relate to a guy from Kansas, but like you have to represent, and it's just, that's what we're talking about with play. Is like, if you're gonna take risks and you're gonna be allowed to play, then, you know, it's just like, it should be treated in that way. That's why I was saying I wanna be able to tell the breadth and range that white people get to do without thinking that Succession is representing all white people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you for saying that, because you just dovetailed perfectly into my next question. Go off. Tension. There's a tension there that I have felt as a writer writing about women of color, people of color, of, am I the right person to do this? I have this pressure as, you know, the person that is in a position that a lot of us are not in a position to be in, where we can write about our communities, represent our communities, tell those stories. And, you know, there is a pressure, I think, underlying all of that around, am I the right person to do it? What if I do wrong by my community? It hurts more when it's your people and you mess it up, right? So how have you all navigated that?
It's interesting. I'm in such a different space. The first show I ran, I was surrounded by people that really loved up on me and lifted me up. The importance of allyship can be real. And that's whenever white guys are like, I can't get jobs, which is insane. I'm like, you want to work forever? Partner with one of us. Partner with one of us and lift us up. It's not going to be about you. Try to deal with that. But you can lift up other people's stories and you'll work forever. And I was really fortunate that I worked with two men who consistently lifted me up. And as a result of that, I was healed from past trauma from other spaces I had been in. And I really took up space. And I sit before you now, somebody whose last fuck has been given. Truly. Yeah. And it's creating in this space is such a liberating thing, and I want that for all creators. It's the piece that Linda was talking about is, for me, success means peace. For me, healing the intergenerational trauma of my parents and saying we don't need that anymore because I have peace. We're not trying to survive. We're not trying to pay our bills. We're not trying to hustle. We're not trying to fight the fight.
Prove our worth.
We're not trying to prove our worth. We're not trying to represent everyone. We're not trying to heal everything. Once I can have peace, I'll know I'm successful.
Thank you for that. So I want to talk about the strikes. We should talk about the strikes. I think one of the critically important things that struck me as I was reporting on the strikes is how much that story is a story about the instability in this industry, in the entertainment industry, you know, and who has the generational wealth to wait 9 months, a year before they get another project, right? Who can do that? Who can't do that? Who is a caregiver, a parent? We know that Latinas are often both of those things or one of those things. Can they afford to wait? Can they afford, not to get residuals? And so I think that story about who can afford to be in this industry, to build a career, is a central part of the strikes. And so all of that in the context of Latinos have the widest pay gap of any group in this country, earning 52 cents on the white man's dollar. That's the new number out for this year. And so that's the reality that we're living in, right? How have y'all navigated that in your careers? The challenges of dealing with the instability in entertainment, and how have you seen your colleagues, your coworkers, people that you worked with who maybe are fantastic at their jobs but are wondering, can they stay in this job? How have you navigated that?
The thing I want to say is like, I've been poor all my life. I know how to be poor.
Yeah.
Like, I know how to navigate that shit because, like,
Yeah.
I literally up to like, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, I was like living with very, meager means. So, I mean, for me, I think the bigger thing, it is financial. When I speak about my specific experience as a Latina, I think it's having a family who, because of the systems that we're living under, have so much trauma that they demand so much of my time to help with their healing, right? And so to pursue a career like this one, where you need to show up like that to different things, but then, someone at home is having a PTSD meltdown because of something that happened in their childhood, and you get the call from mom, and you're just like, do I go to the meeting, the dinner with that person who could be a connection, or do I go home and help my family through this? And like that was a lot of, my earlier years in the industry, is like figuring out how to balance. It all comes back to the same thing though, right? The money of it all, and like also financially helping family, and like trying to figure out how do you do both. You can't really, you kill yourself, and that's what you do, and it's not viable or realistic, and that's why I am so critical of the capitalist systems we're under, because I feel like I chased that for so long, and I literally had to break myself to get to this place. And then once I got here, I was like, wait a second, I shouldn't have had to break myself to get here. And it's just such a you realize that the entire system's so messed up. And it does, our communities are the ones that are the most affected by that. So of course we're gonna have a difficult time coming up. I had a conversation with someone in the union. I had some concerns about a few things during the strike that pertain to BIPOC communities, and they made a comment about not having that issue in 2007, and I was like, we didn't really exist that much in 2007 in the industry, and like how interesting that that's not part of the conversation now, and which is why we need to have that representation there as well, right? It's all of it. And by the way, I'm like hella pro-union, like I said, Teamster 100%. It doesn't mean like that we aren't like a community that needs to talk, right? And figure out how do we support. Luckily right now I'm in a position where I do have wealth, but there's a lot of folks in our communities who don't, and they're the ones on the front lines, they're the ones at the pickets who need that support. So yeah, I don't know if I answered the question, but I talked a lot. Did that work?
What about you, Danny? How's it been for you as an actor?
Oh God. Yeah, when I first moved to LA, I was what I would call scarily poor, where it's like, that's too poor. I was just like stealing food. I used to steal food. They can afford it. But I agree is that we're so used to being poor that when the executives were like, oh, our plan is to have them lose their homes, I was like, LOL, I don't own a home. That just shows how out of touch you are. We're used to you trained us for this. I'm used to being out of work for long periods of time. I'm used to you paying us late is another thing. And so I feel, unfortunately, we are a very resilient people. And I want to say, like, the queer, no one has been there for me more than the queer community. So I've been emotional today. I've been emotional today. This is so bisexual of me. But yeah, so I just feel like they, I can't even name it. There was a show made by Stephen Canals, can't name it right now, but I was like, that show, I was just like, No, you don't. As queer people, it's like, you don't understand. I don't have anyone. And so we are each other's family. And we, if anything, I'm very petty. So I feel like I'm successful out of spite. I have not died out of spite. And you won't get rid of us out of spite. And so, I don't think I answered the question.
But you said a lot of fun
You
stuff.
said fun stuff.
Okay.
No, look, I think we have to be resourceful, and I think really building off of what you two said, it's like I'm on this picket line going, some of you never put your makeup on at Sephora, and it shows. Some of you have never gone to Nordstrom's, bought a dress, wore it to an event, and took it back right away, and it shows.
Girl, I did that 2 weeks ago.
You know, like, we've been poor, please. That's the scare tactic. We got this, you know? And so I think that we just need to, double down and build community. I think the strike is an opportunity to get out there and talk to one another and to build community, find your people, so that on the other side of this, y'all have been sharpening your tools together. Y'all have been saying, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna meet. I mean, it's so, whenever I talk to young people who wanna write, I'm like, I did this with no money. You go and you get the $2 Totino's pizza, and you're like, yo, I'm having readings in my living room. I'm gonna have Totino's pizza, and we're gonna sit and we're gonna read each other's work. That's free. It's $2.
It's actually $2.69. I got one the other day.
$2.69 now. Well, you obviously don't coupon, and I do. So there are ways to come together and hear each other, do scenes, sit and read each other's work and break it down. There's ways to support and build your community in this time, and that community is getting it ready for the other side, where we're gonna come out strong.
All right, okay. So I want to hear solutions, because as journalists, we love to focus on problems, right? Where it's just it's a terrible curse that we have. But I love to hear solutions. I want to hear from each of you. What are the non-negotiables, the things you think need to change in order so these Latinx folks can stay in the industry, and so they can tell, have a pathway to tell the stories that y'all have been able to tell about our people and all of our nuances. What are your non-negotiables?
We have to be loud. We have to be loud. The amount of times, guys, I've gone and spoken to executives where they have said to me, you guys aren't that loud about it. You guys show up for our movies. Opening weekend, if a movie is #1 in America, it's because 1 in 4 were Latinos. We made that movie #1. And they've said to me, you come to our stuff, and then when you guys make stuff for yourselves, you guys don't come. That's what they've said to me so many times. I've gone out with movies where they're like, we love this, but it can't be a Latina lead because you guys have 4 stars. You have 4 Latina stars, and that's really it. So I'm like, well, that's because you don't let us build more Latina stars. You need to put one of us in there, and then it's like, oh my God, she's amazing. Oh my God, she's amazing. But they need to be on shows where they are the lead and they are on the poster, not the side part where you can cut it off, And that's always been my mantra is I want them to be on the poster so they can't be cut out of the image. So I think that if you love something, I think that we are social media has made us very excellent haters. But I think what we need to challenge ourselves to do is to be an excellent lover. How much better does that sound? Love stuff hard. If you look, I'll post about anything Latino. But if I love it, whew, that's the hardest part of the strike for me, is not being able to celebrate all of the amazing wins we've had this summer. It's been an incredible summer for Latino content. Storytelling. They've programmed me to say content, and I'm so angry about it. It's not content, it's storytelling.
I was gonna say excellent lover is my Finsta handle, so can see some stuff on there. What was I'm sorry. I was also thinking about what you had said about white people, how they lost a job to us, and I want to say that I just want to address that. That is literally a lie. They're losing jobs to each other.
Two more famous guys. You please. Okay, this. We gotta. You want action? Call it out. We're silent. It happens in front of us all the time, and we're silent. It does, and we just swallow it, and we're like, oh, you're one of those. Okay. You got to say the numbers do not show that. That is a lie.
Statistically.
You are losing
Factually.
parts to more famous white people. I'm so sorry. I know that's hard to hear, and it's easier to say it's their fault. You are losing jobs to each other, not to us. The numbers show it.
Every year, the UCLA comes out with their diversity
Yep.
report. And
Stacey's here. I saw Stacey.
Every single year, we are the least, yes. We are the least paid, least represented demo. You are losing jobs to each other. Just look at the graph. But I completely agree in that representation, it can't go up. It can't be like 4 of us getting all of the roles. It has to go out. And they're more willing to take risks on white actors that they think are about to pop or white writers or whatever, but we have to be A-list actors in order to be thought of as stars. And I'm over that. Y'all are over that. That's why we're writing our own shit, making our own stuff. And that's what I'm really excited about. I'm really excited about finding people who love me, who believe in me, and they're like, no, I want to see what she can do. And the other people that don't, I'm like, whatever. You know, they're always going to exist in our business, but holding tight and kind of locking arms together, I'm really glad and lucky that I've gotten here to find the people that love me.
Yeah. Linda, what's your non-negotiable?
Oh, dang, I thought you were going to skip me.
No,
Let's
I wasn't
see.
going to skip you.
What's my non-negotiable? Tell me the question again.
So what do you think is, what needs to come out of the strike? What needs to change? What is the thing that you think is most important for Latinx communities, creators coming out of this strike that will really propel folks forward? That is the thing that's really affecting folks. It's not letting them push forward with their communities, their stories.
I mean, there's so many things that
Yeah.
I think we're fighting for that affects us at the core the most. Writers' rooms, the amount of people that can be in a writer's room, I think is important. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. It's the amount of things. It's hard because even when you have those wins, and they're going to help us a lot, I still think there's still work that needs to happen that is even beyond that, and it's across industry. So when you talk about research, like, what a blessing to have researchers who are out there doing the work that we need to hear. Like, I get data from researchers constantly, and I'm like, oh my God, like things about my show that I'm like, I knew it. Like, I knew it was right. I knew that you know, and the speaking up, and that's all really important. And I think in terms of being able to have content that that is diverse even within our community, I think it's like people who have a voice and who have any amount of clout, ability to be able to use that to uplift people. So that's for me, coming out of this, like the strike is going to give us some tools to help us as showrunners, as like creators, to be able to say, no, I want to have these people in my room. And then beyond that, like, I want to have a creator who is Afro-Latino, who is Indigenous Mexican, who is Asian American. Like, I don't only develop Latino stories, like I develop all kinds of BIPOC stories. It's not just Latino for me. I think a lot of people, that's the thing that they think I only do. And I'm like, nah, I grew up in LA. Like, my best friends are Filipino and Tongan and Samoan and Vietnamese. And like, I want to tell all the stories. And so to be able to use, there's this strange thing, and I'm like meandering because I'm trying to find the thought here. There's this strange thing where they don't trust us to tell our stories until we've done it.
Yeah.
But how are you gonna do it if you don't trust us to tell our stories? That's right. So when you are able to finally do it, which I was very blessed to have that opportunity, suddenly you're on a list of people who they trust. And even then it's like shaky, right? It's like, we trust you. And so when you're on that list, suddenly your name means something, it does something. That's something that I learned in this process, and I was like, okay, cool. Awesome, I got that power, that ability. Who can I bring up with me who are very talented creators or writers who have not been given the opportunity to create their show because they've been told repeatedly, like, well, you haven't done it yet. They could have years and years of experience, more than me, and be told, you can't do it because you haven't done it. And yet they'll pair me with them and say, okay, well, she's done it, let's do it. Like, you can do it that way. So for me, there's a lot of like politics, there's a lot of strategizing that in my head I think is really important beyond just what we're gonna be getting out of this strike. I don't think the battle ever ends. And I think it's different battles for us than most people know. And so I think the conversation continues. 'Cause I'm always questioning everything. I'm like, I don't know. Does that really benefit us? Let's figure it out. Let's talk about it.
Yeah. Do any of you wonder whether there's something that is happening that is sort of hasn't been uplifted, is invisible in sort of in these dynamics of what's happening in the industry for Latinos, that you want to uplift, that you want to name and point out and say, you know, that is something that has happened to me or it's happened to people I know, and we're not talking about it because, like you all said, in 2007 we weren't talking about a lot of these issues, and now we are. So I'm wondering if you're thinking ahead, you know, what are the things that you want to see named, that you want to see brought to the fore? Is there anything that comes to mind?
I think for me, production budgets. There was a study that Ana Cristina put out this past summer about how some of our shows don't get the same amount of money for, I think it's for marketing as well, for our stuff. And like, you know, myself and my co-creator always felt like something was off. That's why researchers are so important. And then the discovery she made was, yes, BIPOC shows have a significantly lower production budget than mainstream white American run things. And that tells you everything you need to know about why we are struggling to succeed. They're giving us the smallest amount of money to make these same shows as other people and then expecting us to pop off in the same way, when they're not giving us the money to get the best directors, to be able to pay our actors to like not want to kill us because we're like overworking them, to like get the best of the best. Like they're not giving us the money to be able to like give them everything they need, give us everything we need to create the best show possible, and then marketing money to then put that out into the world. Those things are so crucial and important. You can't just throw a little bit of money at us, be like, we tried.
Yeah.
You tried, but you fucked up. And it's like, well, the research shows you did not give me the same as everyone else, and I still gave you a hit. Like, the hell?
It's almost like maybe there's a movie that you did that sort of touches on that. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
We should Google it if anyone wants to Google it after
Everybody
this.
Google.
So I want to end on just kind of panning out and looking at this moment, right? Addressing, so it's a moment where we're seeing, obviously, streaming is a big part of the discussions with the strikes and the possibility of streaming, in that we can perhaps tell more diverse stories, but the perils of streaming, in that, are you going to get paid enough to tell those stories, right? So there's that dynamic. But even panning further out, we are in a moment of enormous organizing, union action across the country. Latinas not only in the entertainment industry, but here in Los Angeles, we have the Latinas in the hotel industry. In Las Vegas, there's some Latinas who might go on strike soon as well. I mean, it's happening everywhere. Latinas are leading so many, and women of color more broadly, are leading so many of those movements. I mean, come on, unions used to be what? White old men, right? And now we're seeing women of color leading them. And so I wonder, taking in all of that context, how you view this moment as affecting the future of Latinas on our screens, on Latina stories, how this moment's gonna shape it.
I think being unafraid and being united. Like, I don't care what background you're from under the umbrella of Latinidad. I support your story because we need it. So I think that because of, and I think that talking to, you know, I've had a lot of, I know X, ¿qué se llama? No sé. Social media has, I know it can be a dumpster fire, but it has actually been such a beautiful place for me. And what I do is try to have really honest conversations with the community. Because when they're angry, I understand the anger. I get it. I hold space for the anger. But also, we just need right now to be loved up on. So it can't, it cannot, one show, one musical, one movie cannot make up for 200 years of lack. It can't. What can is we show up big to that, and next year there's 3, and the next year there's 10, and the next year there's 20. That's how we do it, loving each other. I really feel like loving hard, loving each other, supporting one another, and being loud about what we love and what we want more of is really the thing that's gonna make a difference.
Ooh. I was gonna say, going along with that, like solidarity, the reason why we're winning and are going to win this strike is because of solidarity. Like you were saying, our Teamsters, IATSE, the hotel workers, nurses, teachers have been striking. And it's so wild. I deal with a lot of trolls. I'm just very vocal on Twitter. Why are y'all laughing? Is that not her? Yeah, when we first went on strike, it was like, well, the teachers, they should be striking. I want to be like, 1, they are striking, pull up to a picket line. But 2, who taught us? right? Like my lit teacher, your music teacher, the theater teacher. Like, how dare you spit in the faces of people who dared us to dream? And that's the thing that goes back to like, oh, you can't be an actor. You don't deserve to be a star. You can't be a director. Like, so much of the comments that I saw were like, you don't do real work, and it's such a disrespect to the arts. And I just feel like the solidarity, teachers have been out, they were like, don't pull us into this. And they like had their picket signs and everything. But the solidarity in our community throughout all of these unions has really helped us and pushed us forward. And that's why we are winning, is because of that solidarity.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Danny. Linda, you want to add something?
Dang, how do you go after that?
I don't know.
Gosh, I think all of this is making me think about a week or two ago. My aunt is the president of LACLA. She's a union organizer, and she's my dad's little sister. But she's not little, obviously. She's a grown woman now. But she like went up there. It was a very it was in Mid City, very community nonprofit place. She was so sweet. She gave me an award, and she put on her mariachi sombrero and her mariachi jacket. And she just gave this rousing speech to everybody in the room, all full of union members. And I just got so emotional because, I'm getting emotional now. I was just reminded of it's just so beautiful to be reminded of where we come from and who has been on the front lines in so many movements. Like you said, BIPOC people and women have been on these front lines for many, many years. For so long have we been fighting for equality and for fair wages. And I think that's that legacy is one that runs in our DNA for all of us. You know, it's the hope is eventually we get to the peace and the joy, but the reminder of fuck, we're fierce. Damn, we've been fierce. We've been out here surviving in ways that people didn't expect us to survive, and still fucking wearing our mariachi hats and singing songs and having a good time. Having some good tacos, they were really good, and that's beautiful. And I felt blessed to be able to be there to be reminded of that, because when you're in this industry, you get caught up in the Hollywood of it all, and it's kind of you get pulled away from what's most important. And the stories we tell, a lot of times, it's for them. You know, it's because we want to see the change ricochet across everywhere. So I guess just remember that you're a badass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
And going off of that, I want to share very quickly. When I was picketing, and I was picketing it at a big Latino picket, and people were like, "There's choreographed dances. We're out Friday at Fox. There's choreographed dances. There's singing. There's dancing. There's music." And I was walking with a white guy, and he said to me, because they tell me to my face. Anyway, he was like, "I don't know that this is a good look. I don't know that you guys
Just
are
because your parties are boring, don't
I don't know that this is a good look, all this celebration." And I said, all this celebration is why we've survived.
Yes.
Yes.
This dancing, this singing, this music, this togetherness, this is why we've survived. So don't you dare say that to one other person.
Y'all, let's hear it for these fierce women. Thank you, Gloria, Danny, Linda, thank you so much. It's been such an honor to get to talk with you tonight. And up next, we are going to get to hear from our editor-at-large, Aaron Haynes, who's going to be in conversation with Eva Longoria. So let's hear it up for them.